kind of wanted to back up and talk a little bit about now and revenue streams, because that's a lot of what you guys have been talking about. So I sort of made some notes and said, okay, just want to make sure everybody's on the same page. How many of you are writers and are writing music? Good, okay. How many of you are affiliated with a PRO? Performing Rights Organization. Aha. One, okay. So one of the most important revenue streams is when your music is played, sitting here and we're listening to music, right? There's a performance royalty. You have to go back to 1900. The idea is pretty simple. You put Louis Armstrong around a giant microphone and they all recorded together. There was no overdubbing. And that was a performance. And wound up getting squished onto a piece of wax or plastic or whatever. So when that was played on the radio or in a restaurant, that performance is technically a re-performance of that moment. Starting with ASCAP, A-S-C-A-P. ASCAP was the first to start collecting money for songwriters. And if you're a songwriter, fast forward to 2015, every time you play a gig, you're playing some of your music. And in almost all of those venues, they sign blanket license agreements with ASCAP or BMI or CSAC. And if you go to the ASCAP or BMI or CSAC site and you look at BMI Live, I'm BMI writer. So it's a pain in the ass. You're sitting at the computer, but I put in every single one of the gigs that I play. And what that boils down to, and then I say, okay, we played of the 28 songs in our set, we played 10 that were mine. And I put them in, and I also put in the James Brown cover tune that we did, and this and that, and I put them all in. I said, here's my set list. And I put them in, and twice a year they send me a check. Now, because I own my own publishing company, so I have Moon Voyage Publishing, and because I'm also a writer with BMI, I get 2 checks. Now, I cash both of them and put them in one account, but I get Moon Voyage Publishing check, and I get Chris Daniels, the writer's check. And they're anywhere from $250 to $500 a piece. Now, you guys know from working gigs, you don't make a shitload of money when you're playing. $500 is, I mean, that's 2 gigs for me, or 3 gigs, or sometimes 5 gigs, depending on, how many gigs I'm playing. So, it's something to think about. It's an important revenue stream that is not just about your song being played on the radio. That's important too.
So is that, when you say like that much, is that from just the songs that you played at shows?
At shows.
Oh, wow.
We do 80 shows to 100 shows a year.
Okay.
So I'm putting in 80 to 100 songs, set lists from 80 to 100 nights.
How long is your set typically?
They're typically anywhere from 75 minutes to 3 one-hour shows.
Okay.
So they're paying you to play your songs?
The venue, this goes back to Victor Hugo. You guys probably remember me doing this back in class, but Victor Hugo, the guy that wrote Phantom of the Opera, wrote some tunes, went to a bar and had the band play the tunes. The bands play the tunes. Victor bought booze. At the end of the night, the bartender said, "Where's my money?" Victor said, "Yeah, but the band played my tunes." It goes to court in France, and the short version of it is the judge said, "Victor, pay your bar tab," and then said to the owner of the venue, "You brought in all these extra people. Your venue benefited. So the venue must pay the songwriter for the music." And that's what BMI and ASCAP collect. Very simply, that is, this venue probably isn't big enough to have a BMI or ASCAP license, but the Walnut Room or Herman's Hideaway just down the street, most barbecue, all of those have BMI, ASCAP, CSAC licenses. And technically it's the venue. Same thing with a radio station. If you think about it in a weird way, a radio station is a venue. And how do they sell ad revenue? By the songs they play. Who gets paid? The songwriter. So every time this song gets played on, or let's say Michael Jackson's Man in a Mirror, Every time Man in the Mirror gets played, the woman who wrote it, an amazing woman out of Los Angeles, gets money. And she gets a lot of money. A guy named Rick Roberts, who wrote most of the songs for Firefall, makes anywhere from $40,000 to $60,000 a year from performance royalties. Still.
That's crazy.
Yeah, isn't that crazy? $40,000 to $60,000 a year, because every time you walk into a King Supers, you go, "You are the woman that I've always dreamed of." You guys have heard this song, or "Just remember I love you, it'll be all right." That's Rick Roberts. And you've heard those in every goddamn Safeway you've ever been, right? That's 40 to 60 grand a year. So that's why you want to join a PRO. Not a bunch of people. It's free for the writer when you when you create your publishing company, because you're going to want to. You should read up on it. Go to Google and read up on it. It's an important revenue stream. And what we've got now is a world of pennies. We've got these rivers of pennies. Spotify is pennies. iTunes is pennies. And in order to make it work for people, there's two models right now going on in the world. One is the old album model that Adele just knocked it out of the park with. You've got this great model. Here's Adele. She does an album. She doesn't put it on Spotify. She makes a buttload of money by selling her album. This giant thing. Flip side of that is Drake. And Drake keeps putting out singles, constantly putting out content on the internet. Very successful. So it's sort of two divergent models right now of what's going on in the business. And the question about whether the album is viable anymore. EPs are probably better. That's a whole other topic. So, Sound Exchange. How many of you are familiar with Sound Exchange? Two. Okay. Sound Exchange. So, when you put out your record, even if you just put it up on SoundCloud, or you just put it up on any kind of aggregator puts it up on iTunes, anytime you put it up there, you want to make sure when you're setting it up with that aggregator, CD Baby, TuneCore, any of those possible people that get it to the next level, that if they offer you what's called an ISRC code, stands for International blah, 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 doesn't matter, but it's pretty easy, ISRC code. The reason you're driving in your car and your radio says this song is Michael Jackson is because there's an ISRC code on it. And that ISRC code is usually put on in the mastering process, but a lot of times when we're just working in our home studios, we don't put on ISRC codes. But your aggregator will. It usually costs you like $30 or something like that. But that means every time that song's played, a little magic computer number spouts up in the world and a little flag raises. And where that gets really important is if you actually wind up with a song on something like Sirius XM. So Sirius XM pays somewhere in the neighborhood of 75 cents a play. So if let's say you write a blues song that winds up on B.B. King's Blues Cafe, and it gets in some pretty good rotation, meaning they play it 4 or 5 times a week over a period of 3 months, you can wind up with checks from Sound Exchange anywhere in the neighborhood of $500 to $1,000. And that's real money.
Are those the ones that are linked to YouTube monetization?
Yep, and that's the other thing. They're totally part of YouTube. So ISRC codes are put on in the mastering process. But like I said, if you just master in your basement, iTunes, CD Baby, and those kinds of things will do that kind of stuff for you. And that's YouTube and iTunes Play, iTunes Music, and all that kind of stuff.